23, town council meeting for the town of Woodfin. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I have a modification to propose to continue item 2 under new business to next month so that we can solicit applications for members to the Planning Zoning Board of Adjustment. We haven't opened that up publicly, and since we're reconstituting one board, I think it's an important enough move that we need to open it up for as much public engagement as possible and continue it out 1 month to solicit any interest from the public that may exist.
Is that a motion?
That would be May 16th.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
So that motion is to continue item 2 on new business to May 16th.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item, consent agenda. Shannon?
Thank you, Mayor. We just have a few items on the consent agenda. Of course, our regular business of adopting meeting minutes from last month and from our last budget work session. We also have a resolution fixing a date for a public hearing for the annexation of properties located off of Elkhorn Scenic Highway and Windy Cove Road. And then another resolution to pursue the bicycle and pedestrian grant through the NCDOT program. And that's all we have for consent agenda.
Okay, on the public hearing, you got a date.
Yes, that, it's in the report. That would be next month at, on May 16th.
Okay.
Where will that be held? Here, okay.
Okay, to have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Next item is public comment. We have one person signed up for public comment, Mr. Walt Brewer.
Evening and happy tax day, if that's an appropriate reading. It's not. I want to talk, I live at 403 Secluded Forest Drive, and that's what I'm here to talk about. In 2020, when Teague Engineering did the pavement condition survey, they provided a list of the roads graded from worst to better. And Eric Hardy was the administrator at that time, and he explained that the roads were going to be addressed in that order, trying to bring all the roads in Woodfin up to a maintenance standard. And so last year was the first year that they actually got the work, started doing that work. And that's pretty much how they were done. Looks like there were, 12 or 15. As I recall, there was one road that opted out for some reason. I don't know what the details were. And there were a couple of roads that were skipped. I think at least one of them might have been because it didn't have any houses on it. So with the beginning of this year, I expected that same thing to happen, that the roads were to be repaired. The next one's on the list in worse to better order. And so I got a list from Adrian this morning about what the roads were, and that's not the way they're being addressed. So there's, it looks like they're skipping 3 and then doing 2 and then skipping 3 and then doing 1 and then skipping our road and then doing another one. So I'd be perfectly happy if the original plan was adopted and I would just sit back and wait until our turn came. Johnny did come out and put cold patch on a couple of places that were pretty bad. And he did that, I think, about a month ago. So in 2021, I wrote, along with my neighbors, our estimation of the condition of the roads. And this was based on using Teague Engineering's handbook, or the handbook that they referenced as how they graded the roads. And so we measured and checked for alligatoring according to the descriptions. At that time, I sent that to Eric and didn't get a response. Shortly after Shannon signed on, I sent another copy and didn't get a response. I kind of understand Shannon was, a little bit underwater at the time, probably. But, I question whether our road was even as far down on the list as it is. But be that as it may, my question for you all is why are you departing from the, the stated methodology for addressing the roads? And, why skip over some? So I realize that you all are probably not going to answer a question right now, but this is a copy of a spreadsheet that the Teague engineer prepared. I only copied it down to where it includes our road and the one beyond it that's being repaired. But it seems like somebody is getting preferential treatment for some reason, and other people are being skipped, other people's roads are being skipped over for what I hope is also good reasons. So, thank you all.
Okay, any comment from the board? You want to get back to him?
Yeah, we'll look into it and get an answer back.
Okay, any other person wish to comment? Okay, hearing none, town manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. So as is our custom during the town manager report, we like to report on new contracts that have come in the last month. So we've had 3. One for Newcomb Tree Service for $23,900. This was the contract with the tree company who removed the trees down near Riverside Park. And these trees were removed in order to avoid the sensitive season for the endangered bats that we're trying to kind of be respectful of, and in order to keep the park contract or the park plan on schedule, we had to remove the trees now, even though we don't quite have our permits ready. The second contract was for BH Granning. This is a landscape maintenance company, $28,000. This is for maintenance of exit 23. That's Interstate exit 23 by Reynolds, by the Reynolds community. This is the result of a pre-existing agreement or a longstanding agreement with NCDOT. The town had a number of years ago agreed to maintain exit 23, so we don't really have the staff capacity nor the proper equipment in order to keep up with that maintenance schedule on a regular basis. So last year and this year we've contracted with BH Granning.
He wants to hold questions.
It doesn't matter. So.
Is that BH Granting, is that annual?
We do a 1-year contract with them, yes. So they'll do it for this growing season, and then it'll go quiet for the rest, when grass stops
The
growing.
area around that exit is vastly improved over the way it used to look, so thank you, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I think starting last year, they've done a really good job, and it's really kind of perked up. I do hope that I can reprioritize this year, working with NCDOT and possibly getting the town out of that contract or out of that agreement. I don't know if it's really in the town's best interest to maintain controlled access right-of-way in perpetuity, which is how the agreement reads now. So we approached the NCDOT with a discussion last year. They were open to exploring the idea more, so now that a year goes by quickly, so here we are with another growing season, so I'm going to try to reach out to the folks at NCDOT and see what we can consider. The last contract was for Black Mountain. That's actually a software company, Black Mountain Software. They're the company that we contract with for all of our financial software, and we've added a module now in order to do the stormwater billing, which is something that was introduced to the council during our budget work sessions. A couple more updates from administration. The Town Hall, Town Center needs and feasibility study is moving forward. We are having a scoping meeting tomorrow with the project consultants or the preferred consultants. This scoping meeting is an important step in the contract negotiation, so they have questions, we have questions. We're going to kind of figure out exactly what we want tackled, and then they will get back to us with a contract. Another update is we had the good news that we were awarded a $120,000 grant from the French Broad MPO for a Greenway feasibility study for a connection from Woodfin to Weaverville. We'll be meeting with the Weaverville, our colleagues and other stakeholders from Weaverville next week in order to kind of to look at the overall proposal and the plan and what we think might work, might not work, in order to figure out what we want to include in the RFQ. So that'll be posted after that. And we're still awaiting the official paperwork from the MPO too, so it'll be a little while still before anything happens, but we're starting to have those conversations. In the planning department, we had our 2 big community meetings last week. They went really well. We didn't have a massive turnout at the community center, but the turnout we did have was really valuable. We had really good comments from people who participated. They were very engaged, and we got some excellent feedback. Our consultants are continuing to look at other engagement opportunities. We're kind of moving into the more sort of pop-ups, so as events occur, or they may just sort of station themselves outside popular businesses such as an Ingles and just ask people questions as they come and go. A lot of these are just sort of like one question type of engagement moments, and they'll just record that feedback and include it in the overall community feedback. I think the next scheduled engagement opportunity is at the Woodfin annual 5K event. So they're going to have a table there, and they're going to talk to folks as they mill around. Our next steering committee meeting is planned for May. At that meeting, we anticipate the consultants will have sort of digested a lot of that feedback, and everybody will be able to kind of consider that as part of our next steps. Also in the planning department, we are moving forward with merging the planning board and board of adjustment. There's an item on your agenda later tonight as one of the first steps to that, and then we'll have a couple more items next month. Under stormwater, we have the assessment and prioritization study. We have learned that this field work has been delayed, not because of anything that's happening on the town side. It's really, I think, staffing issues with our consultants. So they're reprioritizing this now, and we hope to get it. We had hoped it would be completed by the end of April, maybe early May, but now it looks like it's probably going to be sometime this summer. But that will time well with the permitting transfer, which is also planned for this summer. So I think this will all kind of come together in the next few months. The stormwater utility, of course, that was introduced to council at the last budget work session. The utility fee ordinance will be adopted in June along with the budget. And I reported earlier that we've contracted with Black Mountain for the utility billing.
I wasn't able to attend that meeting, and my question is, the fee tax, to me it's a tax, what's that money going to be used for?
It's what we call a, blanking on the word, enterprise fund. So it is, any money that's collected can only be used exclusively for the stormwater program. So it pays for infrastructure repairs, it pays for the salary of our stormwater administrator, it pays for other program elements. If you recall, the MS4 permit has certain control measures that have to be included, and so there are certain programmatic elements that have to be included with each of those pieces, and so it pays for all of that.
That's fine.
And we can only charge a rate to cover the cost of the program. We cannot charge extra.
It just scares me. Company as big as IPEX and many employees they have, I'd hate for it to be like Champion and then pack up and leave Woodfin, because it'd be the same impact for Woodfin. And they're a big company, as you know, out of Brazil, and there's nothing for them to move on.
The staff studied it pretty thoroughly, and we benchmarked other municipalities, what they did, and we proposed what we felt was the most fair and equitable distribution of those costs. So, and there's a little bit more research about that, so if you have any interest and we would like to follow up offline, be happy to do that.
I've had a lot of time. 2016, Asheville enacted the same, and they put their budget out online. You can read it. It amazes me how much of their money actually goes to offices and directors and everything. Very little actually goes to cleaning up the streams or replacing culverts. And
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen here in Woodfin.
Well, it is a state mandate, and it's an unfunded state mandate, and the state does authorize municipalities to charge a rate in order to cover those costs. And different municipalities are going to have different requirements. We only have one FTE under our program that we're paying that salary for. Everything else is the elements that are required by the program. So that will include some repair and replacement, but it also includes things like education pieces that have to happen, communication pieces that have to happen. So these are things that are typically dictated by the state.
And Shannon, we've had that permit since 1981. Would it be useful to go back over the history of how close we were to having state action against us for failing to meet the requirements of it?
Yeah, I mean, we have not satisfied the requirements of that permit and had letters issued by the state threatening revocation or actually revocation of the permit. We've worked hard, Adrian especially, over the last couple of years in getting back into good graces with the state and having that permit reinstated. So we're now in good position, but a condition of that permit being reinstated is us implementing a stormwater management program, which we have failed to do since having that permit in place.
I think a different way of saying it is that we're going to start doing all the things that we've always been required to do
But had failed to do.
and just hadn't been doing.
Yeah.
And then the question would then be, do we want to pull the funding for meeting those minimum requirements that we've always been supposed to be complying with out of the general fund, or do it on a basis of we're going to have it impacted just on the people who have the most impervious surface and contribute the most to stormwater. So
They
it's not so much
require
of
a
whether you're
stormwater
going.
fee?
It's not-
Who requires a stormwater
So
fee?
the permit requires that we do 6 things. Those were all included in the
Right,
presentation.
right.
We've never done them, which is why the state was going to take action against us. So to start doing those and to not have action taken against us by the state, we have to implement those 6 things. Those cost money. The choice is, do you do a fee that goes to the people with the most impervious surface, or do we take it out of the general fund? That would be the most regressive way to do it, so thus the fee.
You shouldn't feel like you're by no means alone, because I think it was a crackdown that started a few years ago to say, where are we? We have had all these in place forever, but we weren't, the state wasn't making everybody, I think it's even got federal roots that, they weren't following their own regulations to make localities actually follow through and implement those regimes. So you've got to find some way to pay for them, and like Eric
Well, I
says,
agree.
you can either charge everybody, even if they don't have any impervious surface because they don't have 2 cents to rub together, or you can say, you've got enough to have a whole bunch of impervious surface, so you need to pay your fair share.
I just hope it don't bite us.
Understood. Moving on to parks, public works, and facilities, I think most folks have noticed the absence of the Silverline building in Silverline Park that has now been demolished. We were hopeful that the concrete slab might have been in good enough condition for us to reuse it, whether that was for pickleball or restrooms or some combination of other uses. But it turns out now that we've had that assessment done, the concrete slab is not in good enough condition to be reused, so we've gone ahead and authorized the contractor to remove the slab as well. We are recommending moving forward with a small design RFQ in fiscal year '24. That would just be to study citing the permanent restroom facilities that were a component of the TDA grant and the Silverline Park plan. So that does need to happen, hopefully in fiscal year '24. And we'll have whoever the design consultant is look at other programmatic elements in the park that could be considered, whether that's pickleball. We also want to look at pedestrian circulation, parking needs, the wetland construction, whether or not we want that expanded, things of that nature. So that'll all be explored as part of that contract. The Public Works salt shed, it's another delay. We've been awaiting construction plans from the engineers. We need those plans before we can go into permitting. We had hoped to have those by now. We understand they've been busy, which is true with a lot of our design professionals in the area, but they are working on it, and hopefully we'll get those soon. I do think we have time this year in order to get the bids and get that constructed before cold weather season. And then Just to report that our shelter reservations are on the rise. We've had beautiful weather. We expect an uptick in activity when the parks reopen, the restrooms open, and the weather improves. But we are actually seeing, I think, an even higher number of reservations than we have seen historically.
Both parks, or is it more Silverline or more Riverside?
Well, there will be more information here in a
Okay.
little bit for you to talk about that. And so that's it for my update. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Shannon?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, Mayor, the next item will be a public hearing.
Okay.
And Rick is going to present.
Okay, Ricky? The next item is a public hearing on the zoning text amendment, and I'll let Ricky explain it, and then we'll go into the public hearing.
I'm going to try to explain it for you tonight. So it is a zoning text amendment. One nuance in there is that it's allowing the town manager to appoint the zoning administrator. It's not on the slide, but that's a very small nuance there. It's the very beginning of the ordinance. But more of the meat is it would consolidate two of the boards, the planning board and the board of adjustment, into one board with dual roles. This was updated to be an effective date with this ordinance on May 17th. So if you approve that tonight, it would be about another month. And then we'll also be preparing some resolutions to abolish the existing boards. So what would that board look like? It would be a 7-member board with 3-year terms, be staggered obviously. All of those 7 members would be planning board members to vote on those legislative items like conditional zonings or text amendments. And then 5 of those persons would then be acting as your board of adjustment. So we'd have all 7 here, move into that second part of the hearing. 5 would be sitting up. If we had somebody out, then we'd have them backfill, but that'd be your variances and special use permits.
Excuse me, Ricky,
Yes, sir.
on the first bullet, how many will be staggered how way? Can you just quickly say, will it be 1 for 1 year, 3 for 2 years?
It'll be either 3 or 4 for 1 year, and the other remaining ones for 3 years. So we won't do 2 years, we'll do 1 year,
Okay,
3 years.
all right, got it, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. And then you have a hard copy laid in front of you. That's the edits that's being referred to here. So removal of a 60-day clause, actually 160D specifies if the planning board doesn't act. So that's struck. Again, amended effective date to actually May 17th. Most of the time you do an ordinance effective date immediately. This one's going to be pushed off about 4 weeks. And then there was a clause added, numbered as 4 and 5, about the effective and considered published once adopted. And then we have a suggested motion up here for you.
Before we have that motion, let me ask you a
Yes.
question. Since we voted to delay this, do we need to change can you back up one,
We're delaying.
the effective date?
The vote was to delay the appointments, not the
So,
adoption of the ordinance.
our meeting-
Two different
Okay.
items.
Our meeting's on the 17th next month?
16th.
16th? Okay, so if it's 1 day after, it should be, yeah.
Okay,
it
all
was.
right, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully you would be appointing members at the next meeting, and then it'd be
This
the,
will be effective as soon as
Yeah.
they get.
Okay.
so you have any questions for staff, or I guess you may want to open it up for comments? Public hearing?
Public hearing first.
Do you have enough people to fill the board?
We have 8 of the 10 members, 8 are willing to
To stay.
continue. And then if we advertise externally, and then we may have more than 8 that
Good.
you all can.
I just watched it the other day, and there wasn't 2 showed up, and the chairman.
You have a question, comment?
Well, I'm happy to just flesh out a little bit of what you presented. The resolution is something that I've suggested because there's some unsettlement in the law about when you take folks off of a board and you're effectively abolishing both of these boards and saying, now we want this one combined. I think you've got, everybody here is willing to participate, and you're not telling anybody you haven't done a good job and you're out of here. So it's not like you're removing them from office, but the cleanest way to do it is just to say, we have these two boards, both of them are no more, and now we have one combined board. We can do that, as Shannon was saying and Ricky explained, we'll do that with you can change the ordinance now. It won't go into effect until May, and then when you're ready to do your appointments, we can do all that in one resolution. So, that's kind of the purpose.
And don't you think advertising it, maybe we don't have to go a whole month, we can advertise for 2 weeks, and if you get candidates, interview them and be ready.
Council, and you guys can
Okay.
review them. Yeah.
Got it.
Any other questions for Ricky? You ready for the hearing? Okay, you've heard the information as presented, and I will open this public hearing at 5:25 PM. Does anyone wish to speak? Does anyone wish to speak regarding this public hearing? Last time. Does anyone wish to speak? Okay, hearing none, I'll close this public hearing at 5:26 PM. I guess we need to vote.
I guess I need to read this first, right?
Oh, go ahead.
All right. I move to approve the proposed text amendment with the recommended changes as proposed by staff and find that it's reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the Town of Woodfin Comprehensive Plan, and meets the development needs of the community in that the request, 1, provides additional clarity and predictability to development requirements, thereby supporting economic development, and 2, ensures that the town's planning, zoning, and permitting processes facilitate sustained and positive development and support the needs of business and industry.
You want to repeat that? Okay, we've heard the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item, a discussion on the use of the community center and other public spaces. Council members Edgerton and McAllister. Who first, Jim?
And I'll just queue up really quickly. Here's the rental history that we collected for the last 12 months or 13 months. So you can kind of see, of course, March of 2022, Silverline wasn't even on board yet, so that's why it's 0 across the line there. But you can kind of see how many rentals we get in a year for the shelters versus the community center. In case that was helpful information for your conversation, we wanted to share it.
I want to give context to what we were talking about.
Sure. So just some background is we've got the feasibility, the study coming up for a town hall. And the question has arisen of, well, is that just going to be a pure town hall? Do we need to have community center elements to it? Or should we separately be looking for a community center plan around the same time? And we realized that we've not necessarily had the conversation of, do we all agree that a standalone community center is needed? Is that the right way to focus with our limited resources available? And so I think to help inform both the needs study with the town hall and then just our actions going forward, it'd be useful to gauge everyone's interest on whether we think there's a need for a standalone community center or whether that should be folded into the town hall or just not identified as a priority. And I don't believe we've ever had that conversation since I've been on the board, and so I'd be interested to hear thoughts. I know Councilman McAllister is more in favor, is that fair to say, of having a community center?
Well, I have been until, I was presented with some challenging questions. We've used, and I've been to some private community events that have used Weaverville's community center, and it's wonderful, and it's heavily used. It has office space that people rent, and weddings are held and wedding receptions in their main room. But, I was presented with some challenging questions by someone. How do we know that Woodfin, we're not the same as Weaverville? Two questions. Are we sure that there's really the demand in Woodfin for the same kind of facility that Weaverville has? And number 2, as our population changes, is the next generation, these kids and young people we see at Silverline Park, are they gonna have the same needs for the people that are using Weavervilles, the sewing club, Kiwanis Club, what Councilman Edgerton and I were just thinking, that before we rush into this using assumptions, let's have the discussion amongst ourselves and then pose the question, should we ask the town the question in a town hall to coincide with input sessions from the consultants? So that's why this is on the agenda. It really gave me pause to think, and I had to just say, I don't know, I'm not sure.
And just my sense is that the community center utilization rate, I mean, it's hard to know whether that's low because we have a very out-of-date and deteriorating community center, or if it's low because there's not demand for it. I really don't know how to resolve that question. I don't know that we'll necessarily know the answer to it. One thought that I had was that if we're going to be, and it seems clear that we are, going to be building a new town hall, and we just need some interior gathering space, if we were to make like this chamber roughly, I don't know, 20% deeper and wider, and then had a partition to block off just the dais here, had freestanding seating like we do here, that would be a pretty large gathering space if you're just looking for meetings. I mean, I don't think it would be a spot for events, but my just gut inclination is that there's not sufficient demand for a standalone community center of the type that Weaverville has. I think that our gathering spaces, especially when we reinvest in, what we've already done with Silverline and those beautiful facilities, and what we're going to do with the Grand Pavilion at Riverside Park as that project continues, we're going to have a lot of outdoor gathering space, and I just don't have the confidence level to really feel fully confident supporting looking at a standalone community center as well. And I just don't know that we also have the resources to do everything that we want to do. And so I think I'm prompting this conversation just in case I'm just dead wrong and everyone else thinks, no, we need a community center, and so I can just get out of the way. But
I think you got some good points there on what you said.
Speak up, the rest of you, what do you think, Council?
What are the rentals primarily for? Is it for events, for parties, who is renting it at this point? That would not have this, size of
At
event
one time,
available?
90% of it was birthday parties. I don't know about now.
It's a combination of parties. I would say that's the most common rental, is like some sort of party, whether that's
We could go back and see when people rent it in the past 6 months, for example, find out what you rented for.
We do have a few other sort of non-party, and we will occasionally, like for instance, it's our voting center.
True.
I don't know if it takes it offline for that purpose. I don't know that it gets recorded necessarily as a rental, but we do have a few other activities like that happen there. Town hall gatherings, we had a town meeting with Commissioner Wells, things of that nature, other sort of public interest events. Our Woodfin comp plan meetings were held there, so there's a few events like that. We've had one inquiry recently for a recurring Sunday rental for a gardening club, but those are less common.
Peggy?
Voting and the Banner Food Bank activities at the community center were not included in these numbers.
Let me recognize Peggy.
The big Christmas party for the community.
Say it again?
The Christmas party that's given for the community, for the children in the community every year.
We haven't done it for a few years, and we didn't do it this
We
year.
quit doing it. It's the one she's talking about, the one we had before COVID.
Right.
And it would be absolutely loaded to the rafters down there when we did that for the kids. Walt, do you have a question?
My sense of the Weaverville Community Center is that one of the reasons that has such a dynamic program is because it's got a charismatic person that came in there and galvanized the community and brought put together the nonprofit and everything in order to do that. And you can't count on that charismatic person to come out of the woodwork to do the same sort of thing that is being done here. I question whether Weaverville would have the same utilization without his having done what he did. So I would reinforce your question about whether it would be utilized or the substantial expense would be justified.
So how can we poll the community? How can we gather input on that? What would you recommend?
There's a few different input opportunities. We can poll people as they rent, we can do an online survey, we can look at some other engagement opportunities as well.
Aren't the consultants proposing at some point a town hall meeting or two to invite the
Yes,
public
yeah,
to speak,
yeah.
among other things?
I think at least a meeting. I mean, I think these are all things that we'll be discussing this
Okay.
week when we meet. But that could be part of the conversation too,
Yeah.
is.
Because that, and I don't think it's necessarily changing the scope of their work, because if we need, I mean, if we just need interior space for winter events, I mean, we're gonna just need to design this chamber to accommodate that,
And
so.
that's been something we've been discussing all along, is that it's kind of well known that council chambers remain in, underutilized. You have all of this space, and ours is quite small comparatively, like usually they're significantly larger. And, it seems with modern architecture these days, it's easy to
Yeah.
partition off certain sections and make it open for other events.
We may even have options down the road at both Riverside and Silverline, drop-down sheeting walls against the rain, put in some technology for speaker systems, that kind of thing. So we thought it was a good idea to at least have this initial discussion to say, okay, well, let's be careful as we move forward and let's ask a lot of questions. Ronnie, do you have an opinion or?
No, I agree. I don't know that Woodfin needs a full-fledged community center any longer. Years ago, and of course, can't go by that, the community center rented about every day. They had bingo, CB radio clubs, parties, just all kinds of activities up there, but they went. Not because, I don't feel like they went out of business. The bingo went out, the CB radio clubs went out, with time, just old-fashioned stuff, and I don't know if we could sustain one to make the money back. That Woodville's a nice place. My family's used it quite a bit. We used to use this one a lot, not that it's went down any, just Woodville's a better place. That dang gum view looking at the water there is just hard to beat. And I'm a lake man myself, and that helps that community center, to me, 1,000%. Go out on that front deck there and sit there and look at the lake.
I couldn't agree more.
I
Mayor?
wish we had that opportunity.
Yeah.
And like you said, Jim, we have that opportunity at our parks with the river.
Yeah.
Not that 5 years from now, we could build a shed big enough with canvas or clear plastic, they make that stuff down, rolls up and down to make a building out of it or shed. I mean, there's several opportunities there.
Mayor, you have any specific thoughts?
He built the civic center.
No, I remember when they had to build the one that's down there now,
Yeah.
but Woodfin didn't have anything prior to that. And that's, of course, the fire department was in the basement. And we used, the way we funded the community center, we charged fire tax money to the fire department, and then took what we made in rent from the fire department to pay for the community center. But there's a lot of labor put into it, and it was used quite a bit at the time, but it's like everything else, it's kind of dated, like. And if Weaverville didn't have all of those different groups out there looking for a place and participating, they used to all be in the basement of one of the churches out there for a lot. I don't know if it's a Methodist church or the First
Methodist, yeah.
Baptist.
Where they still back the Methodist,
Yeah.
or they've moved
One
out
there
to
in
the
the
Methodist.
library,
Yeah, exactly.
Before I comment further, let me interrupt something. You're having to sit back there in the sun. If you want to move your chair over in the shade, just feel free to do so. Yeah, go ahead.
Anybody wanting to make comment, if you could come to the podium, just so we can
Yeah.
get it.
People online.
I'm Ken Kahn, living on Tulip Poplar Trail. I think this is a great discussion. The only thing I would throw into the mix is over the next 10 years, we're going to see population growth, and it's going to be a certain kind of population growth. And as you consider what you're doing with the shelter, think about what the needs of that group of people might be as well, because it might be a little different than what we have now. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? We're gonna have ample time, I'm sure, in the future for comment.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any today? Appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, and Shannon, does that give you some information to use in our, okay, all right.
Okay. Discussion regarding town advertising needs. Edgerton, McAllister, and Irving.
I'll start with that one. I think residents of Woodfin would be really proud at the process the council and town staff used to establish the budget. Under Sherry's leadership, our budget and finance director, we have individual workshops and meetings, so we're led to go through the numbers and have some really in-detail discussions about how and why we want to spend our money. And as we've gone through the process, different things have come up on what we're spending our money for. Part of our responsibility is to make sure that we get the right bang for our buck, that we're not always buying the cheapest, because sometimes, cost, you pay for what you get. So, council members, myself, Edgerton and Irvin, ask our peers to join us in giving the town staff direction to find a different advertising vendor. We don't feel that the one we've been using is adequate to the town's needs, and nor can it be as we grow in the future. So that's what this item's about.
And Shannon, just to clarify, do you have available the circulation data that we've been looking at, or?
I didn't bring it
Okay.
with me, and I wasn't able to get that information from the ACT.
Okay. So the idea being that in the pursuit of transparency as well, part of that is to get the town's business in front of as many people as we feasibly can. We don't think that's happening now, and so the thought being that when we're pushing out advertisements for town events and town hearings and things of that sort, we should really be trying to hit as many people as we possibly can, and it seems unlikely that that's happening now. And so that's the reason for the direction to staff to look at other options and to see comparatively what it would cost to reach more people.
And how would you do that?
We get circulation data. It sounds like we just don't have it from the Citizen Times yet, but.
And I'm not for a billboard out on the interstate, but I do understand what you're saying.
No, it's just what we're already doing, just is it, what's the cost to reach more people is basically the question.
And that's because we're having so many more people, we hope over time, invested
Well,
in Woodfin and coming in for our parks and our river, just so they can have the broad
As you can
knowledge.
see, and it has been for years, unless something Pacific's going on, nobody comes to the meeting.
Right.
Well, Shannon will do the same exercise that we did recently. I helped her as we looked at the Tribune's data. We got their post office report, and it's just, the town's changing, the town's growing, and we think we need a different source.
Unfortunately, I've talked to several people about our planning board or zoning board that they don't want to get involved, unfortunately. People that's been here a long time to people that's been here a year. They're not interested, and I don't know how to change that.
It's a tough one.
And hopefully, maybe get the word out there in mine.
We would ask, is everybody in agreement that we give Shannon the leeway to go investigate that and make a call?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe come back with a cost or something. I mean, I don't know how it works.
We can talk about that in our next budget workshop, too. That should give you time. Thank you. Appreciate that, Mayor.
Any other comments on this topic? Okay, do we have anything else to come before the board? We need to have a closed session. Okay. Okay, do I have a motion, we adjourn this meeting and go into closed session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Take a 5-minute break.